With the MLB draft tomorrow, starting tomorrow, I figured it'd be a great time to go through and update my prospect list. It's been a little while, and man, with graduations and injuries, it's a lot different and underperformance as well. Some of the guys broke out. It's not all been bad news, but this is a lot has changed since the start of the season. So let's go through this again. The draft starts tomorrow, Sunday. And it's been about a month and a half since we've gone through this, so we're going to take a look. As you see here, the guys who've fallen off my list from last time, one of them is Jose Miranda because he graduated. He is no longer prospect eligible. He joins Joe Ryan, Josh Winder, and Yohan Duran as guys who are all on my preseason list. So that's 4 of my top, 7 prospects from preseason have now graduated. So that's a pretty big hit. And, the Twins have been graduating guys on a pretty regular basis before that. It's been a pretty productive system. And a couple guys who dropped out, the back half of my top 30s, I was kind of moving and shaking and churning through guys. This time, Junior Severino, Noah Cardenas, and Brian Medina fell out of my top 30. So with that out of the way, let's take a look at the bottom. Let's just do the bottom 10. There we go. Now we can see it all. So you can see I've got where they're ranked in my top 30, the name, the position they play, the level they're at, where they were on my last update, and then the difference between that list and this updated list. The yellow shading is for anybody who is currently on the injured list. So not a lot of that here. We'll see that a lot, especially in the top 5, unfortunately, when we get up there. But again, this is a portion of my list that really moves around a lot. A lot of these guys don't feel like they would typically be landing in a top 30 in earlier this year, prior seasons. I think this is it's a bit of a depleted Twins system right now. There's still some very nice talent as we move up. And a lot of these guys have a chance. It's not like these are just throwaway prospects or uninteresting. Some of these guys actually, you talk about like a Misael Urbina, who's back healthy again, or a Keone Cavaco. These are guys who have high profiles. If everything breaks right, they could really jump up the list. But they haven't shown enough for me to do that. So not going to go through these guys one by one, but let's move back up again. And probably the biggest change in my number 11 through 20 spots is guys falling down. You see a couple guys jumping up, but there's a lot of fallers in this section, especially these AAA pitchers, Ronnie Henriquez, Jordan Balazovic, and Cole Sands. Guys who aren't performing very well, as well as I'd like to see. They've fallen, especially Balazovic, I think, has been the biggest disappointment this season in the entire system. You see Blaine Enlow's back on the IL. Again, that's what that kind of yellow shading is for. Some recent draftees, some guys I've pushed up. Danny DeAndrade gets into my top 20. He's a really highly touted international signing they had, who is healthy and playing well down in the Complex League. You haven't been talking about him a lot on the channel because we focus on those full season teams. But he's certainly a guy to keep an eye out on and a guy who could really rocket up through the system. So that is that section there. As you can see, the big risers are Christian Encarnacion Strand and Matt Wallner, who obviously have both been just absolutely mashing. I'm still a little bit wary about Wallner and his strikeouts, but he's walking a ton, so it kind of offsets that. And then obviously has that just massive power. Encarnacion Strand, also crazy power, but kind of the thing that really keeps me from skyrocketing him up is his defense. He's committed over 20 errors. He passes the eye test to some degree, though, at third base. I'm not to the point where I don't think he's not going to be able to play third base at all, but it's enough of a concern that I can't push him much higher. And, being a bat-only first base DH kind of limits his value as well. But still, again, this guy moved up from 16 to 11, Wallner from 17 to 12. And remember, this is a prospect list. Those two guys, along with Spencer Steer, are probably the favorites for Twins minor league hitter of the year. So if you were just sort of ranking performance-wise, those guys have been just amazing. And then we'll move up into number 6 through 10. David Festa is a guy, 13th round pick from just last year's draft. But he's pumping 97. He's showing some good command, just blowing hitters away. I've moved him up from 21 to 10 at an 11 point position difference. Some of that, a lot of it has to do with the way he's performed for sure, but some of it has to do with the guys who've fallen and how poorly they're playing. Again, kind of going with what I talked about in the 21 through 30 spot, this isn't, David Festa, it feels too fast to put him in the top 10 in some ways, but at the same time, again, the state of the system and how well this guy's pitched, I think he deserved to be that high. Spencer Steer, some might be kind of raising an eyebrow on him being in ninth. That's probably lower than maybe some people would have imagined. I'm just not sure who he's going to be. I haven't bought in totally to his power being able to translate against pitching at the highest level. He's basically has like a very Brian Dozier-esque approach. He's and Josh Willingham of that same era. He is hunting pitches that he can pull in the air out. As we saw with Brian Dozier, that can work if you could do it right. So I'm not saying it can't work. I'm not sure that his power is going to continue to show as well as it has in the minors. But I will be happy to be wrong. If I was more confident that he could play shortstop, he'd be much higher. But I'm taking nothing away from Spencer Steer, and as you see here, I have moved him up quite a bit. He was 14th in the last ranking. He's up to 9th. Marco Raya is just blowing me away as a 19-year-old in Fort Myers, pitching so well, being such an unexperienced guy, too. You could kind of give him a free pass if he came out of the gate slow this year, and he's just been incredible. Cade Povich, a guy that I didn't get. This is... Well, I'll analyze the draft, and I'll give you my opinions, but this is maybe a good one to keep in mind. Because all the reports around draft time were that, he usually sits 89, 90. Obviously, that's not getting anybody excited in 2022. Some starting pitcher throwing 89, 90, you're thinking, well, okay, like, why is that guy a third-round pick? Well, he's throwing more 94 usually now for Cedar Rapids, and actually touching higher than that, and really showing excellent command of his secondary pitches. As a left-handed starting pitcher, that's going to be huge for him with his changeup in particular. So I've bumped him up from 9th to 7th. Matt Cantorino, I'm still holding out hope for him. I think he's going to probably end up as a reliever, but he could be a dominant relief pitcher. He's just got to get healthy, as you see there with that yellow. He is on the injured list. And then moving into the top 5, speaking of which, Woods Richardson currently on the IL, Emmanuel Rodriguez, Austin Martin, and Royce Lewis. So it's like, I'm still very excited about, especially the top 5 guys. But having only Noah Miller be the one who's active right now really kind of puts, at the moment, a damper on looking through the system. But, not a whole lot of changes here. At least some of these guys are moving up just because of Miranda graduating. So really no change in the order. It's kind of funny. I think I was the only person I could find that had Austin Martin 3rd in the system entering this year. So I was the low guy on Austin Martin, who a lot of people had number 1. And now, I'm seeing things swing the other way to where so many people are jumping way off of Austin Martin and shifting him down, as far as maybe outside of the top 5. I'm still keeping him at 2 because I don't think he's a shortstop. I've said that a lot, but I do think he's a good athlete. I think he could play a lot of other places. I've liked the way he's looked at second base. And his approach is tremendous. He's a line drive hitter. He has a great eye. If the power comes, he's going to be a special player. There's no reason really to believe in his minor league track record that that's going to happen. So, take that with a grain of salt. But I think his upside, his floor is very high, but his upside is much higher than, in my opinion, someone like Spencer Steer. Spencer Steer, I don't think is ever going to be as athletic as Austin Martin, or, I don't think he has quite the approach that he has. Austin Martin uses the whole field. Spencer Steer's kind of a dead pull hitter who's trying to hit the ball in the air more often than not. Steer doesn't strike out a lot, though, and he draws a lot of walks. So they have that in common. But there's no way getting around it. Austin Martin's been a disappointment, too, though, and his numbers have been bad. And maybe kind of feeding into that conversation that we've been having through this whole talk here, he probably would have fallen further for me had more guys kind of jumped out or stayed healthy, or simply if the Twins didn't graduate as many guys, as they had at this point. So it's not as if I'm holding on to the Austin Martin who was drafted 5th overall or who was the headliner in the Jose Barrios trade. I think his stock has definitely fallen from that, but I still think there's a lot of intrigue around him. And then, I mean, Emmanuel Rodriguez might have been my number one prospect right now had he stayed healthy and kept playing well, but he's out for Fort Myers. So that is it. I wanted to update this. It's easier for me to kind of come in with an updated list and then work from there after the draft and slot those guys in. We won't do that right away. Might be another month before I update this. But there will be draft coverage on this channel. You know, just because the All-Star break is coming doesn't mean that we're going to stop putting out content. Probably doing a live stream at some point this weekend, so be on the lookout for that. Much more home run derby stuff, all-star game stuff. So if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, consider subscribing for more Twin Stock here on YouTube. Thank you.